In a show of growing confidence and defiance, Syria's Bashar al-Assad made an unannounced visit to Moscow, where he met with his most important ally, Russian President Vladimir Putin. Their first meeting in a year and a half, the two focused on Syria's last held rebel areas, where activists warn Russian airstrikes are continuing. Much of Syria's north remains out of Assad's control, where the Turkish-backed opposition holds areas along the border. Hundreds of American troops also remain in Syria's northeast. But it was the last rebel stronghold of Idlib that was weighing heavily both for Putin and Assad. The area is being jointly patrolled by Russian and Turkish troops as a buffer to keep Assad's forces away from civilian areas. But the region has been a hotbed of violence. A recent attack in Idlib killed 3 Turkish soldiers who were conducting a search and patrol operation. Assad has vowed to retake the province, but has mostly left the Russian and Turkish brokered ceasefire in place. And to break down the latest from Syria, joining me now from Ankara is Bilgehan Ozturk. He is a political analyst and researcher at the SETA Foundation, a research and policy think tank. And from Moscow, Alexey Khlebnikov. He is a Middle East expert at the Russian International Affairs Council. Gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. 3 Turkish soldiers on a patrol mission have been killed by a roadside bomb in Idlib. And since June, the area, we have been witnessing military escalation between the Syrian factions as well as the government forces. Alexey, what has sparked the latest unrest and what's happening in the region?
Well, the recent unrest, if we talk about the escalation in Idlib, I mean, that's low-intensity conflict there for the last years. It's ongoing. And actually, over the last couple of years, since the latest Putin-Erdogan agreement on Idlib, the violence actually decreased in comparison to what we've witnessed all previously before 2019 and 2020, March 2020. So that said, this kind of existing status quo in in northwest Syria, in the de-escalation zone, seems like to remain unchanged because neither side, neither party of the conflict has neither capacity nor will to change it currently.
Okay, so Bilgehan, the Turkish Defense Ministry said they did not really know who was behind this attack in which 3 Turkish soldiers were killed. Some NGOs point to the supporters of Abu Bakr al-Siddiq company for this attack. What do we know about them and how complicated is the situation on the ground?
We actually don't know much about them. We know that they are a fringe group. We know that they are ideologically closer to Al-Qaeda Central. And, you know, Abu Bakr al-Siddiq is not the only fringe faction in Idlib. There are a number of fringe groups, fringe factions in Idlib, who happen to be at the same time against and opposed to Head Tahrir Sham and Turkish military forces presence there. So it's a shadowy group. It is not very clear what is their affiliations, and we just roughly know that they are ideologically closer to Al-Qaeda Central. They are jihadists in terms of ideology, and they are not happy with neither Turkish nor Russian presence in Idlib. So whenever they get the chance, they will attack the forces. And since Turkish military forces are the main dominant force on the ground, they will attack Turkish forces whenever they can.
So, Alexey, has the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan affected some groups in the region, or in a way emboldened them to further defy the regime? And are there any direct, maybe, or indirect links between the two regions in terms of military escalation?
Well, undoubtedly, we can see some ideological impact of Taliban success because it's been marketed by all other groups which are fighting for the independence, for their new state. They kind of alleged to Taliban as an example. So if you continue your fight, if you keep being insisting on your cause, then it might lead to a success story. And we hope that currently Taliban form the government and actually get back to the rule of the country. And right after Taliban took over Kabul, HTS leader Julani actually welcomed that move, and several other leaders on the ground also cheered that. So this is why I don't think we can see direct relation in terms of a military escalation, but definitely some ideological, not even ideological interaction, not even interaction, but like linkage between the cause. So basically, this precedent in Afghanistan might become a good driver for the forces on the ground in Syria.
So Bilgehan, Putin and Assad have met in Moscow after 1.5 years. What's the significance of this meeting? Because we know that the Russian President Putin criticized the presence of foreign military forces on the ground, like Turkey and the United States. What's your take on this statement? What do you make of it?
As you mentioned, the most significant bits of this meeting, I believe, the emphasis that was made by Putin on the presence of foreign forces, and he obviously signaled to U.S. and Turkish military presence in the country. And right after that, we saw a level of escalation that was increased by the Russians through air strikes, which was very close to Turkish positions. So in the long run, it is clear that Russia is not happy with Turkish military presence in the country. And in the long run, they would want to see Turkish military presence out of the country. And also, there is a reason, and also there is a reason for this. The Turkish presence is undermining the Assad, undermining the authority and domination that is tried to be instituted by Assad regime, Iran, and Russia. So that is how Russia sees Turkish military presence. But there is a contradiction in this, because within the Astana framework, Russia explicitly approved the presence of Turkish military presence and recognize it as a legitimate force, along with Iran and Russia as the guarantors of the peace process.
So, Alexei, is the Russian president being hypocritical, seeing how Russian aircraft are striking civilian areas? And how about Iran's forces, which have backed the Assad regime for over a decade? Was he also signaling that they have to go as well?
Well, in the first place, it's not that simple. And this message, which not only the Russian president, but other leaders, defense minister and foreign minister constantly reiterating that all foreign forces which are not legally present on the ground have to be out. So that's not about Russian forces and about Iranian forces, which are in Syria at the invitation of the Syrian government, and their presence is legalized there. But also, we have to not to forget that Russia and Turkey have multiple agreements on North Syria, where they jointly have military patrols. They participate in observations and monitoring of the situation. So I wouldn't look at Russia's attitude toward Turkish presence in Syria as a negative and 100% willing to get it out of Turkey. It's more complicated than that. On the one hand, of course, ultimately Russia would like to see that, but not necessarily in a half a year or a year, because currently Turkish forces also play a role of a balancer and kind of a counterbalance to HTS presence in Idlib province. And don't forget that Idlib, HTS controls about from 60 to 80% of the province.
So, Bilgehan, could you talk to us about the Russian position on Idlib? Because Russia accuses Turkey for not fully implementing the ceasefire agreement, a claim denied by Ankara, of course. So, could this latest escalation derail the de-escalation agreement reached between the two countries, or they are still able to manage their differences on Idlib?
Well, on the very day that the memorandum, the latest memorandum, was signed between Turkey and Russia, I told that this memorandum or the agreement or accord will be violated or broken, in the future. It won't be any different from the predecessors, because the structural and ongoing problem in Idlib is the imbalance of military power and air superiority between Turkey and Russia. So there was a pattern in Russia's foreign policy and military conduct. Russia is doing what it can. So when Turkey is not capable of deterring Russian aggression or escalation initiative, Russia will keep hurting or harassing Turkish military forces on the ground as it sees fit, and
Yes.
it is aiming to take more concessions in other files in dealing with Turkey bilaterally.
So, on the other hand, Alexei, just a few weeks ago, a Russian negotiated ceasefire deal went into effect in Dera, where the Syrian revolution all started. And the deal brought the areas held by the opposition under government control for the first time in 2013. How significant is this? And is a similar scenario likely to happen in Idlib? If it happens, how is that going to play out for the region as well as for the civilians?
Well, in the first place, I will compare this to areas, Dera and south, the escalation zone, and northern one. There are multiple reasons why it's different. As for the significance of the recent deal, well, on the one hand, it's quite logical continuation of the developments on the ground. But on the other hand, it is significant because of other developments surrounding this event. So basically, the escalation that started now has been pacified through the further implementation of 2018 deal, which was struck by Russia, United States, Jordan, and Israel on South Syria, which envisaged Russian control and lack and withdrawal of Iranian or pro-Iranian forces from the border with Israel. And that's important also nowadays, in the light of the decision to revive the supplies of Egyptian gas through Jordan and then transform it into electricity using Syrian electricity grid further to Lebanon.
Yes.
So you also know that Jordanian King Abdullah II visited Moscow after he visited Washington. And that was also part of the talk, the situation in Dera, and how Jordan wants to see it de-escalated and being under the control, because that would significantly contribute to revival of cross-border economic.
Do you see the situation in Dara completely different than that of Idlib?
Oh, sure. I mean, in Dera, you don't have presence of military forces.
Okay.
Foreign military forces. Idlib is de facto managed by the Turkish military, and by some estimations, it's from 10 to 20,000 Turkish soldiers on the ground.
All right, gentlemen. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining us on Straight Talk.
Thank you.